Now, we've all heard of the phrase pacing, 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 but what does it actually mean? Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking that that meant running a completely flat power profile throughout the entirety of your race or event. I mean, that's exactly what I thought it meant when I first started racing back in 2006. However, the more you delve into the word pacing, you start to realise that it changes every time and it is completely course specific. Now, if you take a 10-mile TT, for example, with absolutely no wind, then yes, like I've said in previous videos, you're looking for a negative split, and that essentially means for your second half to be ever so slightly quicker than your first half, so you're finishing strongly rather than fading. What if, though, you're riding on changing terrain, a sporting course, or if you've got a really strong headwind one way and not the other? How do you tackle it then? Do you aim for the same progressive power profile, or is it a completely different strategy? Now, the answer is no. A pacing strategy is always subject to change depending on what the weather is like on race day. The course, however, this is something which can be analysed a long time in advance, so you should have a fair idea about how you're going to tackle the course a long time before putting pedal to the metal. So we've come down to cold and very beautiful Crondall to find ourselves a sporting segment of road. So that's going to include a climb, a descent and a bit of flat. So essentially what we're going to do for you is 3 runs. The first one is going to be a flat power profile throughout, so it'll be the same power on both the climb and the descent. The second one is going to be a very poorly paced run, and that's going to be putting out less power on the climb and more power on the descent. And then the final one, this is our best one, we're going to be putting out more power on the climb and less power on the descent, and theoretically, this is going to produce our best result of the day. Now, are you ready to completely change the way you ride and race? Right, run 1. This is our baseline. We're going to aim for a steady power throughout, up the climb, down the descent. Let's get on with it. Now, it's important to bear in mind we have 3 forces acting against our power at any one time: gravity, rolling resistance and air resistance. One of which, air resistance, changes throughout each segment as we progress from climb to descent to the flat. But since the power required to overcome air resistance is proportional to bike speed cubed, the faster we go, the power required increases exponentially. Right, so run number 2. This is going to be our poorly paced one, so slow and steady on the climb and push on down the descent. So theoretically, we're going to have our least amount of distance covered with this one. So in layman's terms, when we're already going very fast down the descent anyway, an incremental increase in power is going to have very little effect on the speed we're actually going. On a climb, however, when speeds are low and air resistance is low, that same incremental increase in power is going to have far greater effect on the speed we're going. So therefore, as you can see, where we put that power out on the course can have such a huge effect, and it's vital if we want to cover the course as quick as possible with our highest average speed. Run number 3. So this is going to be our best run yet. So theoretically, we're going to put out the most distance on this run. We're going to utilise the climb, where we're going to put out the most amount of power, and then we're going to get air on the descent, drop our power, be conservative, but it's going to get us our best result. So here comes the clever bit. Glasses are on, and now it's time for the analysis. So we did 3 6-minute efforts. They included a climb, a descent, and we did it at 3 different pacing strategies, from worst to best, all of them giving different results. Right, so before I break it all down, here is a table of results, so pause the video, have a look, and see how big the differences are, and then I'm going to explain it to you all in just a sec. So 3 intervals, a baseline, a poorly paced one, and a very well-paced one. So the baseline we rode at 300 watts throughout, that's on the climb, on the descent, everywhere. The poorly paced one was where we didn't utilise the climb, and we only rode at 250 watts up the climb and 350 watts on the descent. The well-paced one, however, we did utilise the climb, so I rode 350 watts all the way up the climb, and then halfway through the effort I dropped it down 250 watts all the way down the descent. Okay, so the baseline, we were aiming for 300 watts, we ended up with 301, so it's a fairly accurate start and it's what we needed for a good experiment. Now the climb took us 3 minutes 55 at an average speed of 15.2 k's an hour. It averaged roughly 8%, so it was a very good climb to demonstrate this kind of experiment on. The descent, on the other hand, that took us 2 minutes and 5 seconds to complete the 6-minute effort, and we covered 1.7 kilometers at an average speed of 49 k's an hour. Now that in total gave us an average speed for the whole 6-minute effort of 27.1 k's an hour. So run 2, the poorly paced one. First half, 250 watts. This included the majority of the climb. Then the second half at 350 watts, giving us once again an average power of roughly 300 watts. I mean, it ended up being 301, exactly the same as the first interval we did. So to do the climb this time, it took us 4 minutes and 18 seconds, a whole 23 seconds slower than our baseline. And we covered that at 14.1 k's an hour. Now, the rest of the 6 minutes, 1 minute 42 seconds, and we covered that at 52.9 k's an hour. And in that time, we covered 1.5 kilometers. But overall, we only covered 2.5 kilometers. So for our run 1, which was our baseline, where we averaged 300 watts throughout, we covered 2.7 there. So already you can see from a baseline to a poorly paced one, how much of a difference that's made already. That's 200 meters. It's a good 20 seconds. Right, so run 3, this is going to be our best one. So theoretically, it's going to produce our best result with the most amount of distance covered. So this time, the first half, we rode at 350 watts. And this included the majority of the climb, with the second half at just 250 watts. And this is the fast descent. Overall though, it gives us our 300 watt average power like the rest of them. I mean, as it happened, this one actually came out at 304 watts. So not drastically different, and it's not going to change the result really in the slightest. So the climb this time only took us 3 minutes and 28 seconds. That's 27 seconds quicker than our baseline. And we covered this at 17.4 kilometers an hour. Now the descent, we were on the descent for 2 minutes 32. And yeah, we weren't going as quick because we're only doing 250 watts. We averaged 42.7 kilometers an hour, covering just 1.8 kilometers. Overall though, we ended up with a total distance of 2.8 kilometers, 100 meters faster than our baseline, and that's a 10-second improvement. So as you can see, a huge 300-meter difference between our best and our worst runs. Now, bearing in mind this is just down to pacing, we have the same average power, but where we put it out in the course makes all the difference. Now, as you can probably tell, for the purposes of this video, I've completely exaggerated the principle in a very basic way, using the same isolated stretch of road each time. Now, with the only changing variable here being power, with everything else being consistent throughout, it highlights the importance of pacing and how with the same average power, you can end up with 3 completely different results. Nonetheless, I hope it gave you an insight into how pacing is absolute king when it comes to maximizing your performance. So if you enjoyed this video and found it useful, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. And if you're a new viewer, welcome, hit subscribe turn notifications on, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys very soon.